And what is it like to be targeted, by the way, for your political beliefs by the full force of the federal government? Well, we're going to ask the man just pardoned by President Trump, conservative filmmaker and author Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh D'Souza, thanks for being with us tonight. Boy, this pardon has set off a firestorm of freakouts among people on the left. And today we had an especially big freakout from a former Obama U.S. attorney, Barbara McQuade, who was on MSNBC this morning. Let's watch.
It concerns me that not only is he violating the norms of not going through that normal process, but is he painting a narrative that can be convenient for him that sensitizes the public that the government is sometimes, or maybe even often, very unfair to people, which I think has long-term damaging consequences to the criminal justice system.
The left has freaked out more over my pardon than maybe any other. I was watching something on CNN, I think it was earlier today or yesterday. These things become a blur. And they were saying how dangerous it is that I got this pardon. And I was thinking about that, and it occurred to me that I think I know what they're getting at. It's dangerous to them. It's dangerous to their ideology. And it's dangerous in a way that other pardons, I mean, think of the Clinton pardon of Mark Rich. You've got a guy here who's an international arms trader and possibly a tax fraud and involved in all kinds of rackets. But he's not dangerous to the ideology at CNN. In fact, he helps to support progressive causes. He gives money to the Clinton Foundation. I, on the other hand, am a non-white immigrant. I came to America with $500 in my pocket. And I've been exposing the whole progressive ideology. So I'm dangerous in that way. They're right about that.
John Avalon on CNN today was also, I mean, again, the media, the Democrats, the Never-Trumpers, they're all questioning why this occurred. And let's watch.
What are you supposed to think about this?
Yeah. I think you see this as the power of the presidency means a get-out-of-jail-free card. But this is also someone who's been a self-styled conservative intellectual who's really just been a Twitter troll for a long period of time right now, appealing to all the worst instincts and conspiracy theories.
Well, I've never alleged any conspiracy by anyone. What I have done is expose the sordid, racist history of the Democratic Party, a history that actually continues to the present. I've also exposed a lot about Obama. Look, Obama would not have indicted me if I didn't make a film that deeply upset him. I didn't just go against his ideology. I kind of got into his head. And sometimes when I speak on campus, people go, well, gee, Dinesh, what makes you think that Obama even saw your dumb movie or even cares about anything you have to say? Well, the reason I think that is because he was attacking me on his personal website, barackobama.com. So there you go. This is a narcissistic president who believed in the vendetta and recruited goons like Eric Holder and Preet Bharara to then carry his water for him, to go after me. And every little CNN indication of my case shows that
subscribe to their liberal ideology, Dinesh. Their point is that people like you and people like me, we're alt-right. Do you notice how that's changed now? You're not a conservative, and you're not winning in the arena of ideas. You're alt-right, or you're xenophobic, or I love it when they call you racist. That's always fun. And so it's a way to avoid an argument, a debate. We saw this going back to college. Dinesh and I went to college together at Dartmouth College. Way back before they called it political correctness, they were trying to avoid the fundamental debate about the greatness of Western civilization, how off track they have been on so many issues, the decline of true intellectual thought and diversity of thought. They didn't want that debate. They wanted to shut down debate, which is in line with wanting to shut, frankly, you down or even this show.
I mean, here's a tiny detail about my case that's so revealing. This Clinton appointee judge who adjudicated my case, the same guy who said, oh, no, there's no political targeting here. As part of my sentence, he sentences me to mandatory psychiatric counseling. Now, let's think about this for a minute. What about my case? Here I've given too much money, or my own money, to a candidate, a college friend of mine running for office. I'm not Jeffrey Dahmer. I didn't put bodies in the refrigerator. Why do I need psychiatric counseling? If not, that it's the progressive view that I'm not just wrong, but I'm somehow crazy, that people who disagree with them require not persuasion, but therapy. And so this is a kind of re-education project that was attempted on me, and finally the judge just became super frustrated, and he threw up his hands and basically said, the re-education has failed, this man cannot be psychologically rehabilitated, which I took as a great compliment.
Yeah, well, they tried, Dinesh. They should have put you up on the rack. Maybe they should have waterboarded you. That would have actually been an enhanced interrogation that they would have supported on the left. Dinesh, I also want to get your thoughts on some comments made tonight by Steve Bannon, featured tonight on CNN. He seems to be re-entering the public arena. He's been over there in Italy, maybe working on that populist movement over there. But he said this regarding the Mueller investigation.
I've been a big proponent of Mueller. I was the guy that said, don't fire Comey. This thing's petering out. I've always said, he's a combat Marine, great individual. That ought to play out as it's going to play out.
In fairness, Laura, I just don't know what to make of it. I mean, I will say that actually Mueller was the head of the FBI when my case first surfaced, and the Congressional Oversight Committee had been trying for a while to get my FBI file and couldn't. And then finally they got it redacted, but in it identifies me as a prominent critic of Obama. And I think that's very interesting, because why is that in my file? If this was a case of Lady Justice being blind, they're merely investigating a campaign violation, why highlight my politics? I think it's because the FBI, the Mueller FBI, was signaling to the Justice Department, the Holder Justice Department, here's a guy who's one of your political enemies. Here's a guy you may want to go after. So this is the stuff that the left is doing behind closed doors. This is what makes people like me dangerous to them. This is why I'm not an ordinary conservative, but somebody who ultimately they would like to see locked up.
Well, they've seen and they've tried to silence conservatives before, again, going all the way back to college campuses. They shut down speakers. You've had problem on college campuses. Obviously, Ann Coulter, we're going to talk to her in a short while. She's had problems even being able to speak, physically being allowed to speak and participate. And now that's being, in the Obama era, Dinesh, that was actually used as a tactic, intimidation. Following a Fox News reporter, Cheryl Atkinson, thinks her computer was broken into. I mean, these are intimidation tactics that go beyond the stuff that would normally think of. So they're worried about Russia, but they're adopting the tactics of the old Soviet Union. It's stunning.
There's a deep level of lying and deception that goes on here. You know that both Obama and Hillary were disciples of Saul Alinsky.
Dinesh, what do you think in the end happens to this Democrat Party as it's moving farther and farther leftward?
To me, the party is in many respects rotten to the core, and what's really holding it up is not the Democratic Party itself, but by its own weight it would collapse. But it's sustained by a kind of outside alliance involving people in academia, the left in the media, and the left in the entertainment industry. The left controls these three megaphones of our culture, and they can put out a huge amount of big lies and disinformation as long as that continues. So they're what's holding up the Democratic Party right now. They're the cover-up artists for this party.
Dinesh D'Souza, thanks so much for giving us your first primetime interview after the pardon from President Trump.
Thanks you very much.
The meter is running, as they say. Robert Mueller's Russia investigation ticking off a hefty bill of nearly $17 million, and there's still no idea when it's all going to be over. Here now is Byron York, Washington Examiner chief political correspondent, a Fox News contributor. Well, Byron, what these figures don't show, and frankly, in the grand scheme of things, $17 million in a beltway isn't much. But what they don't show is how much time it's taken away from the executive branch of the government. We elected these guys to do a job. They're distracted from that job by Mueller.
Well, I hesitated to say that $17 million is chicken feed in Washington, but in terms of the government, it actually kind of is. But you're absolutely right about a much greater cost for something like this. And, one of the defenses that Rudy Giuliani has been talking about with the president himself is that complying with the Mueller investigation would take an enormous amount of the president's time, which a prosecutor just can't do unless there's some extremely overwhelming reason to do so.
And then you have the conflicts of interest. I mean, there are just so many of them with this. I've seen a lot of investigations going back to Watergate. I still remember that. But, you know, when you think of course, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, those many emails they had about how much they hated President Trump, or candidate Trump wanted to keep him from the White House. Bruce Orr at the Department of Justice, his wife worked at Fusion GPS, Andy McCabe, it goes on and on. And now there's a question about Rod Rosenstein, and Lindsey Graham brought this up, the fact that he may be a witness and a potential witness for Mueller. Lindsey Graham said, should you recuse yourself from further interactions with and oversight of the Mueller investigation? Here's another one.
Well, you know, this is something that insiders have actually been talking about for quite a while with the Rod Rosenstein situation. If the firing of James Comey is a big part of any case of obstruction against the president, if the firing of James Comey is a big part of that, how could Rod Rosenstein be involved in that, in supervising that at all? I mean, he was up to his neck in the firing of James Comey. Maybe it wasn't his doing, but he was. The president had him write this memo, and so it's unclear how Rosenstein can supervise this investigation and be a key witness in it at the same time.
You know, Byron, here's another thing that's unclear, how this whole thing started. Kim Strassel in the Wall Street Journal wrote about that today. Supposedly, this is what the investigators say, it all started with this drunken rant by Papadopoulos, at that time a 28-year-old minor aide of the Trump campaign, with the ambassador from Australia to the UK. She calls it the curious case of Mr. Downer. That's the ambassador. But the bottom line is, he didn't say that much. Papadopoulos, we were led to believe by the investigators defending the investigation, said all this stuff about Hillary's emails and so forth. He didn't talk about that. And according to an Australian interview with Mr. Downer that was done earlier in April, nothing that Papadopoulos said in that conversation indicated Trump himself had been conspiring with the Russians to collect information on Hillary Clinton. So it's fair to ask, was there enough to go on from this one source to create what Mueller has created, this huge investigation?
And some investigators on Capitol Hill are asking just that. By the way, that happened prior to Mueller. I mean, this was started, the official start that we hear cited is July 31, 2016. But this interview, Downer has gone back to Australia and is a very, very widely experienced government official in Australia, and given an interview and basically said, by the way, Papadopoulos wasn't drunk. Nobody was drunk here. There was apparently one drink consumed, and that was about it. But that basically Downer has given a very different account of this encounter, saying that Papadopoulos did not talk about the Russians having emails or something like that. So what we have to do is look at what Downer has now said, and then look at what we were seeing in the New York Times, which is being leaked by officials.
Right.
Are those stories really matching up?
Right. And was there enough evidence to require putting a spy or an informant in the Trump campaign? I mean, based on this, it doesn't appear so. Byron, have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
David.